And we begin this Sunday morning with the breaking news of an indictment of former President Trump by President Biden's Department of Justice over the handling of classified documents. It's the first time in the 246-year history of the United States that a former president is facing federal criminal charges, as well as unprecedented that the Justice Department is prosecuting the sitting president's former and potential re-election opponent. Trump has been charged with 37 counts, including willful retention of national defense information, obstruction of justice, and providing false statements. The 45th president has been ordered to appear in federal court in Miami this upcoming Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. Here's President Trump's response.
Only Donald Trump is indicted, and they take one charge and they turn it into 36 charges. You saw that. Everybody was amazed. I'm an innocent man. We will prove that again. 7 years of proving it, and here we go again. Very unfair.
News of the indictment came just hours after the House Oversight Committee finally got to see that FBI document alleging a criminal scheme tying then Vice President Joe Biden to bribery. The document reportedly claims both Joe and Hunter Biden received $5 million apiece from an executive from Burisma for what one source called pay to play. Joining me right now with more on all of this is Wisconsin Republican Senator Ron Johnson, who has been at the forefront in the investigation into President Biden and his family's business deals. Senator, good to see you this morning. Thanks so much for joining me.
Morning, Maria.
Your reaction to the indictment against President Trump?
Well, when you consider the exoneration of Hillary Clinton, when you consider the fraudulent and corrupt investigation on Russian collusion, which was a complete lie and the FBI knew it was, you put all these things together. The FBI, Department of Justice, interfered in the 2016 election, in the 2020 election, and here we go again. There's going to be interfering in the 2024 election. They already have. What a mess. Obviously President Trump's going to have a ability to defend himself, but will he be able to defend himself quickly, or is this going to drag on and on and on? So it's hard not to be suspicious of what the Department of Justice is doing once again. As you mentioned, the investigation of Hunter Biden has been dragging on for years. They're able to wrap up this investigation very rapidly. In addition, they announced it pretty much the same day when the details of the FBI confidential human source was going to be revealed by members of Congress. And I won't steal the Congresswoman's thunder here, but it's all suspicious, and it's just a horrible mess.
Well, what about the investigation into Hunter Biden? You've done so much work on that over the years. Where does that stand? We are going now on almost 6 years that the feds have been frozen on this investigation. They got that laptop when? In 2019?
Correct, but they are investigating Hunter Biden as far back as 2018. So this investigation is moving at a glacier pace. We have a whistleblower coming into our office saying that U.S. Attorney Weiss does not have the resources to do a proper investigation. But what's interesting, Maria, now that this FBI document's been revealed, I've gone back and I've looked at the timeline. And first of all, you have to understand the Bidens, certainly Hunter, I think probably Joe Biden as well, knew exactly the type of people they were dealing with. Hunter's business partner, who's also on the board of Burisma, Devin Archer, is now a convicted felon. Patrick Ho, who Hunter Biden was paid $1 million to defend against money laundering charges. Hunter Biden called him the expletive deleted spy chief of China. In terms of Burisma, that's what this $5 million, or sounds like $10 million of bribe money paid. This is all around Burisma and their corrupt oligarch, Mykola Zlochevsky. His assets were seized by the UK in 2014, same time when Hunter Biden and Devin were joining the board. 2015, he was officially declared a fugitive. That's when Victor Shokin was hired as a prosecutor general. 2015 we'll find out is when all this activity was going on with the Bidens. 2016 is when Shokin opened up investigation, and within 3 months, Shokin was fired, and that's about the same time that Vice President Biden was talking to Poroshenko and demanding the firing of Shokin. So it's incredibly corrupt. It's incredibly dirty. The Bidens knew exactly the type of people they're dealing with, but the mainstream media has by and large ignored it. But it is interesting that the New York Times, the tail end of December 2016 or 2015, was actually writing a story about the Bidens and this corrupt oligarch, but then they pretty well dropped the lead.
It feels like American citizens are on to this corruption, even though the mainstream media refuses to report on the most serious charges leveled at a president ever, in my view, the influence peddling. I heard from Lee Carter this morning, the pollster, and she says this most recent poll that she's looking at has corruption and crime at the number 1 and number 2 issues for voters right now. So do you think that people understand that part of this is political? We're going to get into the details of the indictment coming up with Alan Dershowitz, but you say it is political.
Well, I think certainly almost about half of America believes that. But again, the complicit, compliant, corrupt media, they're not covering this thing honestly. And, Maria, I also have to point out, you talked about precedent breaking. President Ford decided it was best for America not to pursue prosecution against President Nixon. President Trump pretty much made the same decision, decided not to pursue any kind of prosecution of Hillary Clinton. Joe Biden could have made the exact same decision, but he didn't. He allowed a SWAT raid on a very secure residence of President Trump over federal records, even though he was holding classified records himself. So that record issue should have been handled civilly. We never should be even in this place. But these are decisions that President Biden made. As much as he's probably lying about not talking to the Justice Department at all, that's pretty hard to believe when you understand how many other lies President Biden has told the American public.
Well, it's just extraordinary. Do you think this impacts President Trump's campaign and his ability to run? He's still the number 1 in the lead in terms of the GOP contenders for 24.
How could it not impact it? Not only is just the legal maneuvering going to distract from him, but this is going to be the lead story in the mainstream media until this case is decided. So I would certainly hope that this trial would take place quickly, that President Trump can defend himself, and we can get this behind us. But what I'm hearing from legal experts is this trial may not even occur till after the 2024 election. That would be a travesty. We need a swift determination of this case, and we need to move on to a campaign.
All right. I think they said that they're moving toward a speedy trial, but who knows? Senator, thank you. Ron Johnson joining us this morning. Thank you, sir.
Have a good day.
You too. And for more on all of this, 2 Oversight Committee members who have reviewed that document, the FBI document, South Carolina Republican Congresswoman Nancy Mace, along with Florida Republican Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. Ladies, thanks very much for joining us this morning. We want to get your take and experience on all of this. Anna Paulina Luna, let me kick it off with you because you were with us last week. And you told us last week you were going to review that document, that you were going to get into it. You've now seen the document. What can you tell us?
I went in at on 10 a.m. on Thursday, and let me tell you, Maria, I was blown away. The fact is that this is absolutely something that Oversight has been speculating on, but now that we have proof, you have a document that the FBI has that states, not only, as the senator had stated, you have 2 separate transactions of $5 million, one going to then Vice President Biden, one going to Hunter Biden. But what's even more shocking, Maria, is this goes back exactly to, you said, to Burisma, to Ukraine, and some of those classified documents that Joe Biden had in his at the University of Delaware actually covered down on Ukraine in that same timeline and periods. So there's no doubt in my mind that this president is corrupt. I really do feel that unless we run an impeachment, I don't think that the FBI or the DOJ is going to do their job and hold him to the same standard of justice that, for example, Representative Mace or myself would be held to if this had been us in the same situation.
Well, let me ask you, do you know what they were being paid for? Joe Biden gets $5 million, Hunter Biden gets $5 million, so they got the $10 million for what?
According to the human source, it was for paying, at least for Joe Biden, for essentially protection. And that was something that was stated by the human source and also to the individual that they were discussing. And it's also interesting that the slang term that was used to describe the payment was a slang term that's used in, I guess, gang correspondence. And so the word would be similar to extortion, that they were forced to pay this amount for protection of Joe Biden, basically.
Unbelievable. Nancy Mace, you called this, okay? I heard you last week say, now that we have this FBI document, we'll see what they come up with in terms of changing the conversation. That is exactly what happened. You called it, Congresswoman. So on the very day that we learned that you all have seen this document, we learned that President Trump was indicted. Your reaction to the document?
No, that's right. And honestly, no one's made the connection yet either, Maria. But when we got access to the suspicious activity reports, the day we got access to the SARS reports, Alvin Bragg indicted Trump in New York. The day that we got access to this 1023 form showing bribery between Joe Biden and Hunter Biden in Ukraine, they indict Donald Trump again. Every time the Oversight Committee has evidence of corruption, bribery, money laundering on the Biden family, they indict Donald Trump. And whether you agree with Donald Trump politically or not, most of America sees this for what it is. It's weaponizing the executive branch to take out your political enemies. And look, Joe Biden wants to give Donald Trump a death sentence for documents. He's facing hundreds of years for mishandling documents, and they want him to die in jail. And yet Hillary Clinton's standing free today. She's bragging about the two-tier system of justice, raising money off of it, but her emails. Joe Biden has classified documents. He mishandled them as vice president. Mike Pence mishandled classified documents as well as vice president. So all these people are held to a different standard except for Donald Trump. And I think people see it for what it is today.
No, it's unbelievable. Look, you all, what a moment to be Congresswomen and on the Oversight Committee, no less. What are you going to do about it? You are an elected official, the both of you, and we are watching this two tiers, two applications of the law. What can you do about it, Congresswoman?
Well, we are, as the Oversight Committee, we next need to subpoena more bank records. I want to go back to Treasury. I'll take Anna, Paulina, Luna with me. We'll all go back. I want to re-review the suspicious activity reports and start to connect those dots, because what we do know, the layering, the scheme of shell companies, and they said this in the 1023 document we reviewed on Thursday, but they made it complicated. They bragged about how it would take the U.S. government 10 years to follow the money. And at the end of the day, Anna, Paulina, Luna on the Oversight Committee, we will all get to the bottom of this, and we're going to follow the facts. And if that means we refer charges to the DOJ, then we refer charges to the DOJ.
Well, Congresswoman Luna, you just said a moment ago the word impeachment. I mean, clearly all of these issues take you to that notion, but you're not going to get two-thirds of the entire, you're not going to get two-thirds of lawmakers to agree to that. So you could impeach him in the House, and then it falls flat, right?
I mean, I think right now what I'm more concerned with is I don't have faith in the DOJ or the FBI anymore. And that makes me sad to say as a member of Oversight, because of what I'm seeing and how they're conducting these investigations. And really, even if you go back to the Durham report, Maria, on page 8 or 9 of the Durham report, it talks about how they even gave special treatment to Hillary Clinton prior to the 2016 election cycle. So I feel that that's probably the only way that we'll be able to actually conduct this investigation and actually get the facts out to the American people, because we are subpoenaing. But as you saw, I mean, we had to literally threaten the head of the FBI with contempt of Congress. And even then, so they gave us a document that was still mostly redacted. And so that is not, they are accountable to the American people. They're accountable to Congress. And it is our job, if they're going to play games like this. I mean, at what point do we stop and say, this is really, I mean, if we don't do anything, it's lost. This country is lost.
Well, it's clearly politicized when we look at how the applications of the law are so different. Final word, Nancy Mace.
Yes. No, we're going to work very hard to show the American people they want transparency. They want accountability. They want folks to take responsibility for their actions if they're corrupt, whether you're Republican or Democrat. We're going to show that to the American people. And it makes 2024 that more important that we win. We win the White House, we keep the majority in the House, and we flip the Senate, because we cannot continue off this Rubicon. We're crossing that Rubicon now. The American people deserve the truth.
Anna Paulina Luna, final word.
I agree exactly like Nancy said. If this was a Republican, we would have the same viewpoints. We absolutely need to be the last line of defense here. We're doing everything we can. And all I can say is for those watching, have faith. We are going to get to the bottom of this, and Joe Biden won't be laughing for much longer.
All right. Thanks very much, ladies. Appreciate your time. South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace, Florida Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. Thank you. Quick break, and then the legal merits of Biden's Department of Justice case against former President Trump. Former acting U.S. Attorney General Matthew Whitaker and Harvard Law Professor Emeritus Alan Dershowitz are here with their analysis. Stay with us.
We have one set of laws in this country, and they apply to everyone. Applying those laws, collecting facts, that's what determines the outcome of an investigation. Nothing more and nothing less.
And that is Special Counsel Jack Smith on Friday after President Trump was charged with 37 felony counts over his handling of classified documents. Joining me right now with legal reaction are former acting U.S. Attorney General Matthew Whitaker and Harvard Law Professor Emeritus Alan Dershowitz. Gentlemen, great to have you both. Thanks very much for being here.
Thank you.
Alan, you are the author of the book, Get Trump, available now. Your reaction to the DOJ getting Trump?
Well, I predicted it. If you put aside all your resources and do what Justice Jackson warned about 80 years ago, where he said it's a question of picking the man and then searching the law books or putting investigators to work to pin some offense on him. That's what they did. And Jack Smith is wrong when he says there's one set of laws. He was assigned only one job, to get Trump. So here's the legal issue. Let's assume hypothetically that a Democrat prosecutor announces in advance, I'm only going to investigate Republicans. And then the investigation produces some evidence of crime. Is that acceptable in America? If the same investigation done against Democrats or done against someone else would also have produced crimes, is it legal? Is it justifiable? Put it for a moment in the context of race in the South. What if a Southern prosecutor in the 50s had said, we're only going to look at black crimes, and then he finds a crime by a black person, while similar crimes are not being prosecuted by white people? Would the courts accept that? That's the key issue presented by this indictment.
Yeah, I think it's really ironic and obviously hypocritical to say there's one set of laws in this country and no one is above the law, when in fact we've got all of these instances of Hillary Clinton above the law, Joe Biden above the law, et cetera, et cetera. Jim Comey, what are your thoughts, Matthew Whitaker? You've both read the indictment. Give us your sense of the legal aspects of this indictment.
Yeah, so it's a very aggressive prosecution by Jack Smith, and I'll point out that he was the one that got reversed 9-0 by the U.S. Supreme Court on the Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell case for taking a very aggressive position on a statute. You know, the interplay between the Presidential Records Act, which says all documents are covered by that act, and the Espionage Act, which preceded it and was passed in 1917, about 4 months into World War I think is going to be the most important issue that the courts are going to have to decide. And as I've read both those statutes, I've thought about the interplay, I've thought about all the other cases that have been brought under those. I just can't see where Donald Trump's position that the Presidential Records Act is more specific and therefore applies to this case is going to prevail, and that this prosecution is going to crumble based on that analysis once it gets to the Supreme Court.
There's only one problem with that, and that is the tape recording in which Donald Trump foolishly waves a piece of paper and says, I could have declassified this, but I didn't. It's secret. Here, look at it. Now, maybe he didn't actually allow the person to read it, but that tape recording, which can't be cross-examined, you can't say it's a flip witness or a witness who shouldn't have been able to testify, that's a damning piece of evidence. Now, the defense could be, hey, I had the right to have that piece of information because the Records Act permits me to have it. But that's going to be a kind of weak defense. I think this is a much stronger indictment than the Bragg indictment, but it's the product of targeting. And the question is, can you prosecute somebody when you targeted that person and went through every hoop, dotted every I, crossed every T, gave lawyers immunity, violated the lawyer-client privilege in many respects, and then came up with something. I don't know how the courts will look at that. And Trump's lucky. He got the case tried in Palm Beach County, where he might get a more sympathetic jury, and he got a good judge. I want to say one word about the judge. She's getting a lot of flack for having ruled that there should be a special monitor appointed to review lawyer-client information. She was 100% correct in that ruling. And it was a civil liberties ruling. And as a liberal Democrat civil libertarian, I applaud her for that ruling. When the government seizes material that's lawyer-client, it should be looked at by a special master first. And the 11th Circuit, with due respect, was not correct in reversing her. And the media is not correct in condemning her. From everything I hear, she's a fair and good judge.
Matthew, is this the most damning part of this indictment, that tape recording? Do you agree with Alan in terms of Trump talking about classified information, saying it's not, it's classified, but I'm going to tell you about it, but you can't discuss it?
Well, right, but this is one of the things that I think most Americans don't like about lawyers, and that is this indictment only talks about national defense information under the Espionage Act, and that's a separate category under the statutes than classified information that's marked classified. And my understanding is this document that Professor Dershowitz is talking about, that spoke about on this tape recording, was never recovered. And so, there is going to be a very interesting at trial argument, and that goes on as to whether Donald Trump sometimes extends the truth a little bit, and this may be a case where we don't actually know what that document was, and since they didn't recover it, we may never know what that document actually was. And this is the kind of stuff that a jury that's going to have reason and common sense but no bias, if they pick it right, is going to have to decide whether this is the case. To Alan's point, after all of the targeting of Donald Trump, is this the case that we want to convict him on?
No, this is a great point. Go ahead.
I'm a little bit of a blowhard. That I show things to people all the time. I don't always tell the truth. So don't assume that the material that I showed these people were actually classified. Now, there's no evidence that they actually allowed anybody to read the material, but it's a defense, and it will be a fascinating trial. It is not a slam dunk conviction.
Yeah, that's great points, both of you. Did you talk about that legal twist that you were referring to earlier, Alan?
The legal twist is, yes, what if, in fact, there is evidence that would be enough to go to a jury, but that evidence would never have been obtained if not for the illegal, unlawful, and unconstitutional targeting only of Republicans rather than Democrats, or blacks other than whites, or Trump other than anybody else. That's going to be a very interesting, novel argument that eventually the Supreme Court might accept.
Wow. Gentlemen, thank you so much. From Acting U.S. Attorney General Matt Whitaker and Harvard Law Professor Emeritus Alan Dershowitz, John Ratcliffe's coming up. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We continue our in-depth coverage this morning of more evidence of a politicized DOJ and FBI as President Trump is facing 37 felony counts over his handling of classified documents. A decision in the investigation into President Biden's own handling of classified material is not imminent. That is according to NBC News. Meanwhile, the federal investigation into Hunter Biden, which began more than 5 years ago, is still ongoing, with the House Oversight Committee identifying bank records as well as a subpoenaed document reportedly showing then Vice President Joe Biden accepted money from foreign adversaries and was paid for policy decisions, according to House Republicans. For more on all of this, we welcome back to the program the former Director of National Intelligence and federal prosecutor, John Ratcliffe. John, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks very much for being here.
You bet.
Your reaction to the Trump indictment, and also what we know about Biden's handling of documents while he was a senator. Your thoughts?
Well, my thought is it's a travesty for a number of reasons, Maria. When you talk about this Trump indictment, it seems very much to be a continuation of the same type of Department of Justice and FBI abuses that are well documented by inspectors general and more recently by the Durham report. Look, let's start with this. Just like the Russia collusion hoax that started with the FBI and the Department of Justice lying to the FISA court, in fact, committing felonies for which someone pled guilty, to create a false narrative, we start out the same way here. We have, prosecutors allegedly committing crimes to prosecute crimes. A member of Jack Smith's prosecution team threatening a lawyer representing President Trump's personal valet, look, you've got to flip your witness, otherwise you won't get a federal judgeship. So starting with that is troubling, but then moving to even what Jack Smith said. Look, he came out with this flowery language that every American would agree with when he says, we have one set of laws that apply to everyone. Great. What he left out was that only works if those laws are applied evenly. And if he was being truthful, what he would have said is if we apply those laws to Trump this way, Hillary Clinton would have been indicted and Joe Biden will be indicted. Look, let's be real easy about this. As a former federal prosecutor, I can tell you when you line up the cases against Secretary of State Clinton, President Donald Trump, and Senator Joe Biden, there's no reasonable prosecutor that won't tell you that the easiest case to make, a slam dunk case, is that Senator Joe Biden broke the law. There is no legal excuse, justification, or rationale that ever justifies a United States senator having possession of classified documents in his home and his office. And it wouldn't have taken Jack Smith applying the laws evenly, even 7 months to move forward on a case against Joe Biden. He would have moved forward in 7 days, which begs the question, it did take him 7 months in his prosecution of President Trump to get to this point. Where's the special counsel that was appointed to investigate Joe Biden? It's been 5 months. We haven't seen a story. You could put out a missing persons report on Robert Hur, the special counsel that was appointed in this case. But if we apply the laws evenly, as Jack Smith says that we should, in any case, at least by the early part of August, we ought to have Robert Hur moving forward in 7 months saying, here's the case against Joe Biden and this is what it means. And, and of course, none of us expect that to happen, Maria, which is why on day one, whoever the Republican president is, hopefully in 2025, it has to be to reform completely the Department of Justice and the FBI, to dump it upside down and entirely reform it in a way that fixes the systemic abuses of a political nature where it's been weaponized, so clearly before the American people.
Well, it's so disturbing to know that on the very day that Trump is indicted is the day that we see that the Oversight Committee reviewed that document that shows a bribery scheme where Joe and Hunter Biden took $10 million from Burisma. Apparently, what Anna Paulina Luna just told us was for protection in Biden and Obama's administration.
Well, apply the same standard there as you've talked about. It's now been 6 years since Maria Yovanovitch at her confirmation hearing to become the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine was briefed by the Obama-Biden administration about one company, Burisma, and to be concerned about that and the relationship and the conflict of interest that Hunter Biden and Vice President Biden had. And then the FBI gets an FD 1023 saying, gee, the reason for that may have been that there was a $5 or $10 million bribe. And 3 years after receiving that, they still haven't moved forward. Where is Jack Smith talking about the even application of laws to the Biden, family enterprises? I think this is so clearly unjust to every American, Republican, Democrat, Independent, that it really does mandate that the next president after Joe Biden address this problem and fix it.
Well, the reason that we keep focusing on all of this money that the Biden family apparently has taken in is because China is our #1 adversary. And this morning we've got more news around Taiwan. Taiwan continues to see Chinese jets, Chinese planes, as well as ships in the Taiwanese Strait to intimidate Taiwan and anybody else who gets involved here. Your thoughts on the most recent provocations from the CCP?
I'm not surprised. It's going to continue. You've talked about it. I mean, it's really part of what I would describe as, and could be fairly described as the Biden administration's battered wife syndrome policy with regard to China. Look, the worse they treat us, the aggression, no matter what they do to us, spy on us, swerve in front of our planes, cut in front of our ships. The worse they treat us, the more the Biden administration goes groveling to them taking the blame for it, backing up, backing down, apologizing, trying to get a meeting with the people who have aggrieved us. And you see that this week with Secretary Blinken going on bended knee, begging for a meeting with the Chinese when they have committed one aggression after another against the American people and our national security posture, never being confronted by it. So why would they slow down when they keep getting away with bullying us, with spying on us, all of that? And in fact, that's why they're expanding that operation, as has been revealed with what's happening in Cuba, where they're going to vacuum up the most sensitive communications about our military bases and our activities, our missile testing, the operations that we have through Central Command and Southern Command in both the Middle East and in Central America, because they got away with spying on us with a spy balloon. And why would they stop now?
Well, they have denied things, and then they're forced to admit it later. The Pentagon keeps lying to Fox News, by the way. They lied about, you told us first on this program when that spy balloon first traversed the country. You said, yeah, it's likely sending information back in real time. They denied it until they had to admit it. Oh, yeah, they did send information back in real time. And now they denied the